Hello everyone, my name is Olivia Leapart and today I will be presenting my personal movement development timeline. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to walk you through how my motor skills, coordination, physical abilities, and activity levels have developed from infancy all the way through adulthood. This timeline highlights major milestones in early stage of life and shows how my early reflexes and childhood movement experiences shape the way I move today. I will also discuss what I hope my physical activities and mobilities will look like as I continue aging through the later decades of my life. Let's begin at the very start, infancy. During infancy, movement is almost entirely controlled by reflexes. These early reflexes are automatic responses that help babies survive before they develop intentional control over their bodies. One of the first primitive reflexes I displayed was the search reflex. This is when an infant turns their head to a stimulus, usually when seeking food or a pacifier. This reflex is essential for feeding in the earliest days of life. Another reflex I demonstrated was the plantar grasp. This is the flexing of the fingers, and this is done when the baby usually wants to hold their mother. This is not, I'm sorry, this reflex is not fully voluntary, but it's a sign of neuromuscular development. I also showed the sucking reflex, which works closely with the search reflex. The sucking reflex involves automatic jaw and mouth movements that help infants feed efficiently. These early reflexes all work together and support survival and early neurological growth. In addition to these primitive reflexes, I also displayed important locomotor reflexes. For example, I experienced a crawling reflex, which is a small movement on the ground that involves alternating movement of the arm and legs. I also experienced a stepping reflex, which is a standing movement when the leg lifts off the ground and creates a very small backward, forward, or stationary movement. These reflexes are early indicators of motor patterns that will later become real crawling and walking. As the reflexes start to integrate, babies begin showing voluntary movements they intentionally control. These milestones show huge growth in strength, balance, and coordination. Typically, infants start crawling around 10 months, and walking usually begins around 12 months. For me, I crawled at 11 months, which is a little later than average, but still developmentally normal. I began walking at 12 months, which is right on time. It may seem like a small difference, but every baby develops at a slightly different pace based on things like body size, motivation, environment, and even personality. Voluntary movements during infancy include more than just crawling and walking. They can also include sitting up, reaching for objects, grasping toys, and pulling up to stand. These skills help infants interact with their environment, explore surroundings, and build confidence in their physical abilities. These early and voluntary movements set the stage for all future motor development. Moving into childhood, this stage is focused on developing foundational motor skills, skills that almost every child learns and uses throughout life. These include movements like walking, running, jumping, hopping, kicking, and throwing. These basic skills are building blocks that allow children to participate in games, sport, and physical play. One skill I struggled with early on was throwing. I stayed in the initial throwing stage for longer than most kids because I am left-handed, but my entire family is right-handed. Since I didn't have anyone at home modeling proper left-handed throwing mechanics, it took me longer to develop the correct movement pattern. This shows how environment and observation can impact the development of foundational skills. On the other hand, kicking became more natural to me because I was involved in dance. Dance helped me develop leg strength, balance, flexibility, and body control, which easily translated into kicking skills. At this point in life, I showed the mature stage, which means I showed hopping on the supporting leg and trunk rotation, including flex knees. Running was a skill that also improved. I started in the initial stage of flat-footed running with arms held out for balance. Over time, my running became more rhythmic and efficient. These foundational skills gave me confidence and allowed me to participate comfortably in physical activities throughout childhood. One of the most meaningful specialized physical skills I developed during childhood was horseback riding. This activity required a different type of coordination and balance compared to my foundational motor skills. I began with showmanship, learning how to handle a horse on the ground. This included guiding, communicating, and creating trust with the animal. After that, I progressed into basic riding skills, learning how to sit correctly, hold the reins, and follow the horse's movement. I eventually moved into the walk to trot stage, which is where most riders begin feeling more in control. From there, I advanced into a trot to slow canter, and eventually from slow canter to a fast controlled canter. Each stage required more strength, balance, timing, and confidence. Riding a horse isn't just about physical skill. It involves emotional regulation, patience, and a strong sense of responsibility. My practice method was mostly serial practice, meaning I practiced skills in a specific repeated sequence. This helped me master the basics before moving on to more advanced skills. Horseback riding became a major part of my identity growing up and contributed significantly to my confidence, coordination, and overall movement development. As I transitioned into adulthood, my movement patterns changed from learning new skills to maintaining physical health and finding balance. Adulthood brings more independence, but also more responsibilities like school, work, and planning for the future. In this stage of life, I focus on staying active through daily habits and making realistic, sustainable choices for my health. Instead of structured childhood activities, I now find ways to incorporate movement into my routine, whether through exercise, outdoor activities, or simply staying active throughout the day. Physical activity in adulthood is important, not just for fitness, but for stress, mental health, and overall well-being. I've realized that staying active helps me feel better, think more clearly, and stay connected to the things I enjoy. When looking ahead across the decades of my life, I have a range of physical, personal, and lifestyle milestones I hope to achieve. In my 20s, I plan to graduate college, begin my career, and focus on building strong physical and mental health habits. This is a time of growth and exploration, and I want to set myself up for success with routines that support long-term well-being. In my 30s, I hope to be well established in my career and possibly start a family. Staying physically active will be important for managing stress, keeping up with young children, and balancing work and home life. In my 40s and 50s, I expect new responsibilities such as supporting growing children and caring for my aging parents. I hope to stay consistent with physical activity to maintain strength, flexibility, and energy during these busy years. I also want to, I also want to continue exploring new hobbies and interests that keep me moving. In my 60s, I expect to retire from my main career but stay active through meaningful projects, including my dream of opening a dog shelter. I hope to have more time for outdoors activities, travel, and spending quality time with family. In my 70s and beyond, my goal is to maintain independence for as long as possible. I want to stay active enough to support my grandchildren, continue traveling when I can, and enjoy fulfilling life. Even though physical ability naturally decreases with age, staying engaged in movement can help maintain strength, mobility, and overall happiness. In conclusion, my movement timeline shows how physical development is a lifelong process from reflex-driven movements in infancy to complex specialized skills in childhood and lifestyle lifestyle-based physical activities in adulthood. Each stage of life shapes the next. Movement doesn't stop after childhood, it continues to evolve based on our choices, environments, and life goals. Looking forward, my hope is to stay active, healthy, and engaged in meaningful movement throughout every stage of life. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.